Thanks very much. It's a pleasure to be here. I'd like to talk to you a little bit about Berkeley, but before I do, I thought I might introduce you to myself. This is the story that you won't hear anybody talk about. So I happen to be from this place in Nebraska, a farm, and I wanted to point it out to you on the map so that you know where it is. It's actually a lot farther than the 1,500 miles you'd think from Berkeley. So I came to Berkeley in 1992. And I joined Berkeley with the idea that we could engineer microbes to do chemistry, that we could make them into chemical factories. We could take simple microbes like E. coli, which grows in your gut, or yeast, which we use to brew wine and beer, and engineer it to produce chemicals. So my lab spent about 8 years engineering these microbes and developing tools, but we didn't have anything to produce. And somebody said to me, one of my colleagues said to me, "Jay, it's great to develop tools, but you really need to work on an important problem." And one of my students at that time brought to me an important problem, and that was malaria. Now, before I get to the application, I thought I'd tell you just a little bit about that disease, malaria. It's caused by Plasmodium. Plasmodium infects your red blood cell. It consumes hemoglobin so that the red blood cell can't carry oxygen. And it's transmitted by the Anopheles mosquito. At any one time, between 300 and 500 million people have this disease, and in any one year, between 1 and 3 million people die of the disease, and 90% are children under the age of 5. And those countries most afflicted by malaria are shown in green on this map. Now, there are drugs that have been widely available for about 400 years. They're based on quinine. Quinine was originally extracted from the bark of the chinoa tree. Wars were fought over getting access to it, and it's been the drug of choice for treating malaria for centuries. But because it's been so widely used and abused, it's no longer effective in treating the disease. In fact, in the 1950s, the World Health Organization even recommended that we put quinine in table salt so that everybody get a little bit in their diet. But the result is that it's no longer effective. However, there is another choice. It's called artemisinin, and it comes from this plant, Artemisia annua. And there's former President Bill Clinton with the Clinton Foundation holding a leaf of this plant, Artemisia annua. And it's the drug of choice because it was found actually here in China many centuries ago to actually be useful in treating first hemorrhoids, and this goes back to about 150 BC, and then later treating fevers, presumably due to malaria. It was forgotten until about the 60s when Mao sent his medical corps off to find a new drug, and they found this drug. But the problem is many-fold. It's too expensive for people to afford, and as a result, there's little supply to many parts of the world. This is how we get the drug. It's grown on plantations, it's extracted, and then it's sent to pharmaceutical companies. And as a result, it's far too expensive for people to afford who live on less than $1 per day. So we said a few years ago, we can take these microbes, these chemical factories, and actually get them to churn out this drug and reduce the cost substantially. So we took genes from the plant Artemisia annua and from a yeast and cobbled them together inside a microbe, much like putting together the circuits in a computer, and got this microbe to produce the drug. And over about a 5-year period, we increased the yields about 10 million-fold, reduced the cost of the drug, and now this drug is slated to be produced by Sanofi-Aventis, a French pharmaceutical company, and it's slated to come out in 2011, late 2011, early 2012. Now, the work we did in my laboratory was done by graduate students, undergraduate students, and postdoctoral fellows, and it was patented by the university. The university did this so that we could protect our discoveries. But the university didn't want to make money off of poor people in Africa. So they said, and I think this was a really important aspect of our work there, they said, we're going to give this drug away, give the patents away, license them to whatever company wants to produce this drug under one condition. Those companies can't make money off of poor people. We started a company, Amyris, and I'll talk about that in just a minute, that did the optimization of the process once we had built the microbe, and then they licensed it to Sanofi. And Sanofi said, we'll do even one better. Not only will we not make a profit, for the people who travel in Africa and need the drug and can pay for it, we'll take that extra money and we'll use it to reduce the cost of the drug for people in Africa. When this drug comes out, we anticipate that we'll be able to save the lives of about 500,000 children a year. Now, we finished that project in 2007, and then it went on to scale up and commercialization. So what should we do next? We looked at another important problem, global warming and energy security. We said we can apply some of the same basic principles that we use to produce this anti-malarial drug to producing biofuels that might actually prevent further warming of the planet. Now, just to remind you of how you get the gasoline for the car or diesel fuel for the car you drove here tonight, it's pumped out of the ground, it's refined in a factory, and then it goes into your automobile. And when you burn that fuel, we put carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, and that causes global warming. There are alternative routes. One of them that we use in the US is to grow corn. That corn takes up carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. We turn it into sugar and then get yeast to produce ethanol. This is carbon neutral because the ethanol that's burned in your car produces carbon dioxide that then is retaken up by the plant. Unfortunately, there are a few challenges here. Corn is actually not the best crop. I should say I'm from a corn farm in Nebraska. This was heresy when I first told this to my father. So we need to replace that corn. And my colleagues and I are actually working on other plants like this tall grass, miscanthus, which I should mention is also a native of China. It grows to be about 12 feet tall, and it's one of the best consumers of carbon dioxide and producers of potential biofuels. And then we turn this into a sugar that then we can turn into our fuel. Now I want to talk just a little bit about the fuel that you might want to put into your automobile. Now, ethanol is a great start. It's an oxygenate. You can add it in small percentages in gasoline, and it makes gasoline burn more efficiently. But the problem is you have to have a special car in order to burn more than 10% ethanol. So although it's a great oxygenate, it isn't a great biofuel. And what's more, it can't be used as a diesel fuel substitute, and you can't use it in airplanes. What's more, it is produced in small quantities, small concentrations in the fermentation broth, and we have to purify it by boiling the fermentation broth to distill it out. I like to say that ethanol is better for drinking than for driving. Well, if not ethanol, what do you want to produce? Well, I want to produce the fuels that are identical to the kinds of fuels that you put in your automobile now, so that we don't have to change out all the cars, all the trains, all the trucks, all the airplanes to match a fuel that nature gave us. I'd rather change nature to match the infrastructure that we already have in place. So we're taking that microbe that produced that anti-malarial drug. We take out the genes for the anti-malarial drug. We put in a couple of genes to make a fuel. And now we've got a bug that produces a fuel and in high concentrations. And now we're getting that out to companies that might want to put that fuel into their planes or into their trucks. Now, the beauty of this is that microbe essentially makes an oil. And just like oil and water don't mix, this phase separates. You get a separate phase with the fuel on top, and you can just skim it off and put it directly in your tank with very little purification. So it's cheaper and much better than ethanol. And this is work that we're actually doing in this institute, the Joint Bioenergy Institute. My dream is that one day places like this farm, this is our farm in Nebraska, might be growing our fuel and our drugs for the future. Now, this research would not have been possible if I had been at anywhere else but Berkeley. Berkeley has been a fantastic place for me to develop my career. I've been there 18 years. I've had the great experience of working with some really brilliant undergraduate, graduate students and postdoctoral fellows. These people have gone off and founded companies. They've gone off to other companies, and they're now, some of them, professors at major universities. This wouldn't have been possible at other places to be able to recruit such superb people. It's also a climate where there's real innovation. We're sitting in the middle of Silicon Valley in the Bay Area. We've also got all of the biotech companies there, and there's a real sense for innovation and an appreciation for innovation. But it's not just about making money there. Carol Mamura, who runs our Office of Technology Licensing, said, our goal in developing technologies and licensing them and patenting them is not to make money off of them. It's to have the biggest impact we can in the world. And I think that really sets Berkeley apart from many other institutions. It's not necessarily about the money. It's about having the greatest impact in the world and affecting most people's lives that we can. So I am so proud to be a part of the Berkeley community, and I'm really happy to be sharing that with you tonight. And I'd like to leave you with, go Bears!